Yeah. So as Audrey said, we took an early break because I didn't have the agenda up and we were just cruising along, but I needed it anyways. Coffee was calling. So um, we will get back on track, and now we're going to go over what I call the right-of-way engineering, ODOT right-of-way engineering process. Um, so a couple of years ago, in our survey leadership peer group meeting, um, some of the lead surveyors said, you know, we really kind of need to put together some kind of a little roadmap of what we do for, you know, new people or consultants, and that just kind of give them an idea. And then we could also maybe throw in some, you know, when an issue comes up, or some tips or tricks or something like that in there. And we want it to be so we can just change it or update it anytime. So this document is a collaboration of the ODOT right-of-way engineering surveyors across the state. Everyone had input in it, but yet no one is the author of it. Okay, it's not a directive, it's not a manual. It's just a workflow with tips and tricks, and it just helps to aid in the development of the right-of-way engineering products, acquisitions. So always consult the right-of-way engineering manual and your ODOT region right-of-way engineering surveyors for conflict or directions. So since I got out of order, and you already saw one of the main products, which is our right-of-way maps, now here's the process that goes into getting to that point. So within ODOT, which probably within many states and typically even within the privates, you know, the project begins, you know, with an idea or a need or a reason. In Oregon, it's called the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, or the STIP. And you'll hear that acronym STIP a lot. And it's ODOT's capital improvement program for state and federally funded projects. So the OTC, or Oregon Transportation Commission, and ODOT developed the STIP, and it's in coordination with a wide range of stakeholders in the public. So once a project is chosen from this STIP, then a team is assembled, and typically it's led by a project leader, and typically a roadway designer that sets the footprint. And I call the project leaders cat herders, because they have to chase all of us around and keep us in line and try to hit deadlines and all that sort of stuff. But anyways, they set the footprint of what the project is based and what the scoping notes say, current standards, the needs of the individual disciplines that are involved in the project. Because you've got utilities, you've got environmental, you've got hydraulics, you've got safety, bike pet, I mean, all of these different groups. And then you have right-of-way and you have survey. So essentially, but we don't really get to say anything. We just do what they tell us, basically. So they create a initial area of impact, or an API footprint. And this establishes the boundary, or kind of the requirements of what survey is going to need to go out and define or gather information for. And so they order a survey for the topography mapping, and at the same time, right-of-way retracement. So survey's first task is a lot of research and planning, right-of-way maps, deeds, surveys, older projects, and the needs of this project. So after that's all put together, survey's second task, and the reason I put survey is because it's not only the topography, but it's also the licensed surveyors that are going to do the boundary. In Oregon, we establish a control network, which is a group of controlling monuments that were used to collect this data. Once that's established, we have the API, we have that going. Then we put in a locate request for both setting the control monuments and then the entire area of potential impact for the project, so that we can start mapping, because sometimes this takes a little while to get all that together. Now your right-of-way surveyors at the same time, or the project surveyor, then has to research every single property owner in that area of impact that we need to do. And per the ORS 672, we have to send out owner notifications and right of entry. And this is so that surveyors can legally get onto their property and take topography shots. And it has a set of rules and everything with it, but we can get in a lot of trouble if we don't do this. So, and that's quite time consuming, and sometimes hundreds of letters, and whether you're getting the landowner, whether you're getting the tenant, that sort of thing. So, so after that's done, all that's out, then we're ready to start and move on. So the crews in the field, which are very critical to our process here, they go out and they search and recover or tie, electronically record the position of all the monuments, property monuments, and set and recorded with county surveys, ODOT maps. All this was within the API or outside of the API, whatever it takes that's needed to resolve the location of the highway in the center line. And then also they're collecting all this topography data also, which moves on to the fourth task. So while the data is being collected, topography, and the crews are out there doing that, usually have them do the monument stuff first if we can, because then the project surveyor can start working on all the information trying to resolve the right-of-way. Resolving the right-of-way is not always simple. There's tons of research, hours of drafting property lines, looking at every single deed in description, recorded surveys, county surveys, and the old right-of-way maps. And so you try to put together all the information. You physically, put all this together and use the monuments, physical features of the road, and then you have to look for also blunders and stuff in older data, because we may be putting retracing a center line that's 50 years old or something. So, but once that's completed and we've got a best fit resolution of the right-of-way center line, then we establish and lay out that existing right-of-way lines. And we draft all that up and put that together with all the deeds and maps and records, of evidence. So after this, the fifth task then comes in for Oregon and for ODOT, and we create what we call a control, recovery, and retracement map, a CRR. So what this does is it has the control that we set and its accuracy, where it's at, what it is, all the recovered monuments that were there that we found. This is per ORS also. And then we give the boundary lines, our widths and our location of our property. And then we show to the best ability and accuracy without surveying every single property, the property sidelines of the vesting owners that are adjoining our right-of-way or corridor. So the map contains, like it says, control, monuments, narrative of the evidence and why the surveyor put the road where it is, and of course the right-of-way widths. And once the creation of the topo map, base map is complete, then we reference that in and show all those features too. So both of these products that the survey creates initially off the bat, they become the base for the right-of-way engineering product. So this will get said several times. We have the right-of-way engineering manual, and we post updates and bulletins to the web to aid and help in the creation of this. There's also a manual for the CRR, which gives the basis of some of the drafting standards and things, but each county you've got to do with their requirements also to fit within that. And here again is the link to our page. So the sixth task now is we create a new CAD file. And we always want to use what we have as a seed RW2D DGN, and it's on the ODOT workspace. And this is very important. It wasn't so much in the past, people would kind of plagiarize other ones and bring it forward, blow stuff away so they didn't have to like start over. But with technology and the way that MicroStation and the CAD programs work, there are certain things that are embedded or updated in those seed files. So you want to make sure and get a clean one each time to make sure everything works correctly. So you name it according to the standards, which right now is project-wide standards. And so you'll have a key number and you have, S and all the things that you have for that. I'm not going to cover that because it's in other documents. And also the name of the map is changed, like we talked about, after 100 years. And it is the Right of Way project is the name of your map. That's not the name of your drawing, your DGN that goes into project-wise. You have to have your specific project-wise name. And so here's another continuation that you don't request a map number. Once you know your right-of-way file number, then you know the map number, and you get that from your right-of-way people or RITs or whoever is your contact. So, but do please send in this map information form. The reason for that is it creates a placeholder in maps and plans of the base information of what that map and the project is. If for some reason someone leaves or the project fails or not fails or changes or something, and an updated map or something isn't sent in, we kind of have an idea of who to go look for to try to find that map or to get it so that we can say project was canceled or, those sort of things. So it helps. It's a placeholder just to help the maps and plans know what's out there and what's coming. Okay, so the next step in this is we have meetings, of course, typically all the way through, but what it comes up to now is we know where the right-of-way is, we know what we've got out there, but now we don't know what we're building yet. So we have to receive the design acceptance plans, or the DAP footprint, which I think it might be called pre-DAP now, because we've got stage gates that changes this up. So anyways, when the footprint for the design team is set and they're ready for descriptions to be created, we then get that from the design team. Once we have that, the Right of Way Surveyor determines the size, the type of map to create for the project. And you determine what the footprint, is it an urban, is it rural? Is it going to be, do you want a roll map, the 24 by under 200? Do you want to mix and match? What scale do you want? Inch 50, inch 100, how much detail? So all these things got to go into determining, what you're going to start out with for a direction. And like I said, with the new map format we just talked about in the other slide, we can mix and match as long as you have, we've got all these borders are in there, and you create PDFs and combine them for a final map when you send it in. Here's the models within our RW2D seed. The ones that you don't use in here, like if you don't need Forest Service, Railroad, BLM, those sort of things, it's kind of nice to clean them out once you've established your drawing, just because you don't have to go look through and try to figure out which one has your stuff in it. And note also that this process or procedure may eventually change with our upgrade to ORD. So currently this is how it's working and will for a while, but there may be some process changes as far as referencing and drafting models versus sheet models, that sort of thing. So I won't go into that, but for right now, we have all this here. Everything is laid out and set. They're all cells. They're all at a 1-to-1. So when you set your scale of your drawing model, it will scale with it, drop it, and go to work. Okay. So first thing is our process is we reference in our CRR data. Now, it may be my own data if I'm the project surveyor, maybe someone else's data that did the retracement or did the resolve. It may be completed and filed with the county, and it may not be. But these are the base right-of-way lines, and these have been given to the designer prior. Now we're just bringing them in for our design for right-of-way engineering. We reference it into the right-of-way design model that's in the seed. We also then reference in the topo base model, and we give it a name of existing for ODOT. And what that does is the pen table recognizes that word exist, just like the roadway designers and others do. And it will grayscale the topography information back, as it's talking about there. Now, one thing, many of the control recovery maps are done in an inch 100 because they don't need the type of detail. Many right-of-way engineering maps are inch 50 because they need more detail. So this is not a big issue other than some of the text that may come through from your CRR may need to be scaled, changed, moved, all that because of the annotation. So like say, next, go to the scale, set your map border in the model you chose. Now, once you figured that out, reference your design model in and get kind of a basic layout and see how it's going to look and what you want to use as far as a border. You may change it a couple times to decide. All of our map borders, like I said, are 1-to-1. They're all origin is at 0-0. So when I bring it in, you bring it in. So these are just kind of some tips and tricks and probably a little more technical than some people want, but it's just stuff we threw in there. You start beginning your design process. You're going to orient the highway. You may need to rotate this, 90, 110, decide what it is to fit based on the type of border you want to use. The length of the project, the lay of the project, is a big intersection. Is there a lot of curves? Stuff like that. And again, as we talked with the other one, is it east, west, north, south, changing directions, stationing directions. You will find some maps that are upside down because they ran the station the other way. And so north will actually be on the bottom of your right-of-way map. Watch for that. Very few, but there are some out there. And then also, again, like I say, whether it's urban, rural, all these factors come into how are we going to lay this out and what is the best way to do it. So after you've done this again, I'll bring this up again, not to beat on the poor horse, but please send in a map creation request or notification to Maps and Plans so we can get they can get a placeholder in there.
Hey, Mike, got a question.
Yeah.
Yes. Does the project surveyor have any say on where the new alignment joins the historic alignment in the DAP? And if not, why?
Yes, so in Oregon, we typically, the requirements, we resolve the center line based on the historic. Unless there's for some unforeseen reason that we use a different center line, but typically we'll use the historic center line and retrace it. And basically we perpetuate that forward in time. The designers then, with their roadway alignment, at some point on both ends needs to tie in to our historic retraced center line. Now, if we're doing a realignment, then that's a new alignment, and we would use the the designer's construction roadway center line or a ramp or something like that. I have seen one which Wayne Donovan knows in Lincoln City, and Kevin had where someone changed and there was like 6 different alignments on 5 different maps. And basically the end result was, we're going to use the new construction center line because it's a hodgepodge and it's all messed up. So, but they do and should tie together at some point on each end. Does that answer the question? Hopefully. Yeah, so the project surveyor determines the right-of-way center line.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So once you get the map set up or the stuff in the right-of-way design, you brought that in to your, and you know where you're sitting. You've got it in your right-of-way design. This is just another trip thing. Turn the topo, your topo reference, just turn it, undisplay it. Go through your CRR data that's referenced in there and turn off certain things like road widths or maybe the alignment and some of those other different things that you're going to redisplay or that you're not going to use. And then copy or import or merge that information into your current model so that you can manipulate it in the sense of text size and that sort of thing. And then just turn your CRR reference back off, because when it's referenced in, you can't manipulate or change those things and overlap things. And also there'll become a point where we break right-of-way lines and stuff like that where the new takes are and stuff. So you want to put it into there so you can remanipulate it. You will want to redisplay your alignments, and typically, depending on who did the CRR, it could have been displayed in survey. You'll want to display it in the right-of-way preference. ODOT has preferences for that. The color is different, and maybe the format's slightly different, but there's like inch 100 and inch 50, so it's the length of the flags for the event points. And also then you can manipulate it because you need to do some editing. It doesn't come in quite right. PCs are on the wrong side, PIA. You know, you need to add coordinates. You might need to move it to the inside of the curve on the flags so it meets our stuff. Might need to slide it in or out to, you know, dodge something. So get it so you can manipulate it there. Use your discretion. Look for examples of recent maps, possibly, you know, go on to Maps and Plans or something and maybe get a recent one or something and see how someone else, you know, drafted, use some ideas, but always, always, always go to the manual, look at the manual. You can also check with your, you know, your lead surveyors in there too for questions. One thing that we always say is the KISS principle, just keep it simple, surveyor, you know, don't overload the map with data if possible. Make it nice and clean, legible if you can. So now you've got, you know, design has come in, the DAP, the roadway designer, has given you his base DGN location. And so you should have all the design elements, including your soap lines, cut, fill, pipes, drainage, facilities, all that stuff. And so work with your designer to understand, you know, the right-of-way needs, because they're going to be in close conversation with each of the different disciplines and right-of-way and different stuff like that. And they're going to say, you know, well, here's a, you know, a pond or a slope line or this or that. And, you know, they say, well, you know, traditionally, I think we need 5 feet past it in order to maintain that for future use, or 15 if we're in a rural area, you know, so maintenance can mow or do things, you know, so they might draft in there and they might say, well, this, you know, this thing just needs a permanent easement, this needs fee. And so they may draft their ideas in there, but it may not be perfect as we would want it. I don't say that anything against the designers, but right-of-way surveyors are, you know, in the state of Oregon, we're the only ones that can, quote, lay out property lines and boundaries. So, but we like, if we can, we try to get even stations, even offsets, minimize angle points as much as possible, put event points at PCs and that, which we'll talk about too. And so ultimately, the actual layout of it is up to the right-of-way engineering surveyor. Thank you, designers, for giving us the help to understand, because you're in the weeds with the design. We get into the weeds with the right-of-way and property. So if we work together and communicate, it helps us all out. So, so now we want to reference in what we decided after we got this identified and we discussed this. For those that are the drafters, we know that there's a clip border inside of those borders, little dash line that's invisible. It's on construction and doesn't print if you're using a pin table. But that's where you're going to clip references, like a view. That's all you want to see. You'll go and bring that into your design model and copy that clip border out so you know how big the map is. Then you decide to orient it and put, if there's multiple pieces, and you lay that out there so that when you're going to start doing your design and layout, you know the orientation and how it's going to look, whether it's going to fit inside of that clip border or not. And so this gives you a reference for all those things for orientation. And then you can detach it, get rid of it, you know, because you've got that in there now. And it'll come back in because you're going to reference that back into the map model, and that tells you where to move the right-of-way and clip your reference for printing. So, all right, these are all technical things. I hope I'm not boring everybody. I'm just kind of how we've laid this out, and these were things that we thought would be good to pass on just as an overview. So at this point though, as we've got it there, we've got design, we've got our initial layout, we've got an idea. Now is the time when we want to schedule what we call in ODOT is the right-of-way layout meeting, because sometimes that could be 2-3 weeks away, just depending on the project and how large, small, different things. And what the right-of-way layout meeting is we have now proposed all these right-of-way, all these layouts, all those files, angle points, easements, all these other things. And it brings together all the stakeholders in one room, which is including construction, maintenance, all the disciplines that are involved, the roadway, right-of-way, all these things. And basically, file by file, we go through every file, every angle point, every slope line, all these things. And basically everybody agrees that, yep, I think we're good to go. And so, okay, so now we've got it, everybody agrees with it, we can start putting it all together. So once that's finalized, you're good to go. Then you want to start laying out the full-fledged right-of-way and the shapes that create the colors and the areas for acquisition. There used to be a method, it was called SO equals, left some little funny dot out there that you could click on. It used to drive me crazy because it would fade away and I couldn't grab it. I personally prefer, and I would teach, that I would create Kobo points for all those angle points and name them like a 5,000 number and the survey calc. There's a couple of reasons that I do this. And this worked with inroads, and it appears to be working with ORD2 just in a little bit different format. Is I create them one time and use them and don't have to recalculate. Also, it's nice because you can go click a slope line and you see that it's a certain station and offset. And I say, I want to go out 5 more feet and I want to go up to the even station. You punch it in, read, you know, there's your point and it's done. They're easily reproduced. You can modify or change them. It gives an exact location to draw your lines to. You can run clearance reports on it, station and offset reports that go along with our variable width tables and other things like that for the QA/QC process. And then it also gives you the stakeout coordinates for when you do the initial, the crews go out to do the initial staking of the right of way. And then it's the exact same points you'll go out and use for monumentation. So it reduces errors, and it's a one-time deal that you don't have to go back and recreate them time and time again. So that's just a preferred method, technical thing, touch and go, you know. We talked about event points. When you're laying out right away and you're looking at this, try to minimize angle points. Like I said, you want to keep monumentation in mind. You want to try to use event points that are existing, PCs and PTs, equation stations, stuff that's going to need monumented anyways. And that cuts down on having, which I've done before, monument 5 feet away from another monument. It's like, that didn't make sense. So also you want to keep in mind, per all the other requirements, we're supposed to minimize the take area when at all possible. We only need what is needed for the project, but we need to keep in maintenance in mind, staking in mind, land value in mind. So the project needs basically in that. So there's a lot to think about. Also to aid in laying this out from, you know, sitting at the desk and all the other things, is use the existing topo, geo-referenced imagery, street view has been amazing. Also, ODOT, within ODOT, we have the digital video log, and also the, Audrey, what's the name of Chris's program that you can measure with the point cloud?
The virtual highway corridor.
Virtual highway corridor. Okay, sorry. That's one we need to probably update in there too. So we have a lot of tools to use with that. And so, and then, you know, we use that to dodge stuff and find issues. We don't want to put event points near property sidelines of private property owners so that they don't be confused with their property line. So always try to put an event point somewhere a good distance away from a sideline if at all possible. When we're buying for fee takes or highway right-of-way purposes that we're going to monument. Okay, another part that plays into here is we talked a lot about access. We deal with access. We've kind of moved away with it a little bit because it's gotten complicated and there's been issues as far as right-of-way engineering because we don't determine access. The region access engineer and the right-of-way, senior right-of-way agents and them, they understand the access that is there, what is going to be acquired, what is needed. And so we decided to not play telephone and get things wrong. And so we have the right-of-way agents and your region access engineers, the access control people, they need to determine it, but we need to know it in order to know, are we putting access control there? Are we changing access? Do we need a file one? You know, those sort of things. So we need to know about it and we need to ask questions, but we don't determine it. Just right-of-way engineer surveyors don't determine it. So, okay, sorry. So when your event points are complete, one of the things that I do, a default or a number level, something that you can turn off or blow away that nothing else is on. Draw perpendicular lines to the center line and extend them out. And so what this is for is this is what you're going to use for the alignment of your text for your station and offsets. So I do that first, get my text in there, whether it's going to be your fee text or your easement text or your offset text, those sort of things. They're easy to turn off or delete when you're done, and you can slide things in and out, keeps everything lined up. Another good thing that I put in is the deal, place your first text, get it pointed forward. If you think you're going to need masking, which is kind of fading out or closing out the background behind the text to keep it kind of a clean look, I like to do that first with the very first one, because then I'm going to copy and move it forward and I don't have to do it to a whole bunch of them. It's already done. So that saves time. So now when you're confident with all this, everything's going together really good. Now you start creating your shapes. If you got tangents, it's easy. You just go boom, 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 create a shape. If it's a fee or an easement, make sure you got the correct one, and the shape, make sure it's a shape. Change its color. And so you decide what, you can make it as rainbowy as you want, as long as each one next to each other is a different color and it shows up good. So if you want reds, you want yellows, you want blues and greens, and and what order you want to put those in, that's really up to the right-of-way engineering surveyor. So, but just make sure that they're put into there. So you get all that together. Then once all that's finalized, it's all labeled, and you start working on the aesthetics, which I call the look and the feel of the map. You rotate your text, you move the text, you mask features and lines, remove or add data, spell check your drawing. You look for overlaps and gaps, things that are poking out here or there. Adjust your text size. I always plot to, or I say print to, a PDF, because you got a white background now. It's a good time to check and look for errors, have someone else do peer reviews, that sort of thing. And then you shouldn't have a lot of editing because you already set and laid everything out in your design model. So it should be all fitting, and you had your border. So now, one key thing here that has been a point of discussion, how am I doing on time? I'm getting there, okay. As you notice in this process that I've laid out here, is the map is first. The map's always first. I don't know, you don't want to put information together to write a description and a sketch map. A sketch map is started out as take the big roll mat, stick it on top of a copy machine, and scan the piece you want. So a sketch map is only supposed to be a snapshot of the big map. So it should have the exact same data, look identically the same. It shouldn't be drafted separately. Why would you want to draft it separately? All the information is on the big map and you've done it once. So please create your map first, get everything the way it should be before you ever go to sketch maps or go to write a description. And I also will state again, if a description comes in, okay, there'll be one cut. If a description comes in to ODOT headquarters, region, whichever, it has to have a map, and the map has to have information, everything about it. I will say one caveat, and that is on small projects that only have temporary easements. There is no map created for those. They need enough information, though, to be checked and verified. The reason why there's no map, now this is for an entire project. If you have right-of-way project 9800 and all it is some temporary easements, you do not need to create a map. The reason why is because those are not going to be inventory that we keep forever. They're going to be there for the project and then they're going to go away. So you have the information for the TEs for that project. Now, if you have one permanent easement or one fee take in that project, you must create a map to show that. Okay, there's my run in. Okay, so now we're ready to start writing descriptions and creating the sketch maps. So both of these products go into the RITS program, which is Right-of-Way Inventory Tracking System, which is right-of-way headquarters program for tracking and databasing everything about these projects and files. So the agents, the appraisers, they all use these to acquire property. They used to, all that stuff would go like to OTC, everything. So we're going to address writing the description after the sketch maps. So just because I like to have the map first to make sure it's correct, because then I know what to write, how to write the description. If I have an error, I can see it. So you go to the sketch model. It's similar to the other. In the DGN, you set your scale. If you want it to match the map model, which is ideal because your text and everything works. Reference your design model in for the first one. With the nesting activated means the topo is going to come through. So your sketch borders are going to be clear down at the bottom. They're all one giant cell. You grab them, move it up, and then you have to drop it so you can move them individually. First thing I do, don't ask me how I know this, but from doing it the other way. When you get there, first thing to do is find and replace and put in all of the project information into the border, the borders, so that you don't have to do it later, because you should only have to change like maybe file number or certain little things, but you don't have to type the file information on every single one as you copy it over if you do it the first time. So the first thing you do is you take that border that you want for the sketch map. 8.5 by 11 is your typical size, but there are other sizes. Legal, which is not used much, and ledger, which is 11 by 17. There's both landscape and portrait sizes there. You can have multiple pages if you need it for a single file, if it's a large file. Anyways, you move it over file 1 and you clip that reference, and there you got the start. Each one of the files on larger projects, you'll have individual sketch maps, which will be individual borders, individual references for all of them. Smaller project may only have one. If it's 3 or 4 files and they're all clumped together, you may use the same sketch map for all 4 files. That's been done before too, so that's acceptable. Work with your agents, work with your regions. Now, one thing that I was taught to do, some people do, some people don't, I do kind of like it, is grab the file shapes for file 1 that are in your reference, copy them into your model, your sketch map there. Then you can turn off all the other file shapes in the reference. This allows file 1 to be the only one when it's plotted using the pen table to have any color. So the neighbors, all the information's there, they're not colored. So that sometimes helps bring out that emphasis. Now, if based on the size, if some of the data or whatever is cut off, copy it in, mask out the other stuff, and make it look presentable. Now, here's the big caveat for everyone is don't get ahead of yourself. Consult your right-of-way, your region surveyors, your leads, your peers, whatever, and check your first set, check your draft out, both your map and your sketch map and your, which we'll talk about the description here too. Flush out all the errors first, all the common mistakes that you would be copying from one to the other, to the other, to the other, because then you don't have to go back and fix 50 of them or 10. You fix the one and you don't carry that over, and the errors can be a lot more minimal. So anyways, sketch maps, you can continue that for each of them. Okay, writing descriptions.
Hey, Mike.
And everybody struggles.
It looks like we lost Mike.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was Mike or me.
I think it's Mike on my machine.
Must be, yeah. He just, oh, is he back? You're on mute, Mike.
All of a sudden, everybody disappeared. Sorry.
I thought it was me this time.
I don't know.
Well,
Okay.
I guess this is a good pause
All
for
right,
me to
so
ask
I
you
am
a
back.
question.
Okay.
We had one question, just what is the standard scale for those sketch maps?
Sketch map scale. Well, there's not really a standard scale for the sketch maps. You could adjust them as long as the information is legible. But if you change it from your design scale, if you have inch 50, if you change it to inch 100 or something else, your text will probably be all wonky. Like it may go outside of the borders or in, you know, so mostly it messes with text if you change that scale. So that's typically so if you can get away with one scale, works the best. If not, you're going to have to do some text editing and manipulation and that sort of thing. So sorry, I'm looking over here because that's where your picture was, where you're looking. So I got too many screens open. Okay, there. All right. Any other questions, or is that the only one?
That's it.
And yes, it was me that got lost, but I'm back. I was going to make that joke. Good time to why not? So you can see that I'm sitting next to a high mountain lake in southern Idaho. It's called Iron Bog Lake, about 9,000 feet. So if I do fall off, that's probably why. But actually, there's probably like 7 feet of snow on that right now and still frozen solid. But it was nice last summer. Okay, so I'll move on. Keep the right-of-way manual close at hand. Keep the approved easement list, what we're going to go over in a little bit, because ODOT is extremely, I want to say picky, but we're not, because there's a reason and we'll talk about it. And there's a deed recording list, which we have, which is the way that deeds are stated in their reference to the counties in Oregon. And it just has to do with, is it the book and the page and this and that. So keep that at hand. We start with a fresh copy of the seed file for the document, and it's located in the right-of-way manual at the following link, and it's formatted for the initial how our description is written. So it doesn't mean you have to get that for every single one of them for your project, but when you start a project, please get a clean one, start fresh, and then you can, copy it over as you're moving down the line. So, okay, and here again, I'll reiterate again, because that was beat into me too as I was coming up. I had a lead right-of-way surveyor that had 3 different colored pencils, and he wore out quite a few of them on my first set of descriptions. So anyways, fill out the file one if you have, or if you're going to use multiple alignments, maybe different stuff, one for each alignment, but get your centerline description, your first file, all the initial things that you would turn in, including copy of the map, and turn that into ODOT, your right-of-way engineering surveyor, your lead, whoever, and have it critiqued, have it checked. Make sure that your right-of-way centerline description is correct. Make sure your orientation, all these little things that you would potentially copy over and over again are correct before you do that. The file name or the sketch borders, all that sort of stuff. Because once you start copying it, then you got to go fix everything. Or if you overwhelm them with 50, descriptions and there's a common error, basically they're going to look at it and go, this is the same error through everything. So, fix that and then we'll start over again or something. So please try to do that. We're here to help. ODOT is not the big bad wolf. We want you to succeed as far as consultants or even our peers. We want you to succeed because it helps us as much as it helps you. So we're here and we're give as much information as we can and as much help without doing your job for you, but as much help as we can, because that's, we're all in it together. Okay. So final descriptions, all ODOT descriptions have to go through, no matter what, have to go through the region right-of-way surveyors, and they have to approve all the descriptions, sketch maps, and map. So there's, as far as I know, there is no exception. ODOT has to approve them. So they can't just be put into RITs without approval. So, and at this point, I think the regions or others within ODOT, we upload everything into the RIT system. But anyways, everything goes through the right-of-way to make sure it's correct. And then this is supposed to be a funny. So now the right-of-way surveyor waits, and a statement has always said, now let the revisions begin, which means we've turned them in final. We say we're done, but stuff happens. So many of those revisions, they come from different reasons. Design change probably can be sometimes one of the biggest. Something happens and a design needs to shift or adjust or change. Owner negotiations, settlements, legal issues, those sort of things. So if you need a revision, follow the process outlined in the right-of-way manual, RIT's workflow requirements. But once it passes the approved stage in the right-of-way headquarters in the RIT system, or is put to the OTC agenda, it becomes a formal revision. And it has to have a formal revision request. And that document explains why or what that is. And they actually do a report to the OTC on the amount of formal revisions. So if you think there's a chance, any chance in the world that something is going to change, don't push your project into RITs too soon, because a formal revision typically starts that clock over again on negotiations or all the legal stuff that comes from the feds and that sort of thing. So don't get in a hurry. I know everyone wants to push, but sometimes the harder you push, the more the backlash. So, so try to work with it. I know we're all under the gun. I've been in the production side of it. I know what's there. I don't know it as much anymore. I don't see it, I should say, until there's problems, but it's out there. So don't get in a hurry, because I think it's a 40-day clock or something like that that could start over, which then just bogs your project back down again. So anyways, try not to get in a hurry. Okay. So now after all this, everything's going through and moving on, and you're getting towards bid let. Another part of the deal is that your right-of-way surveyor and the right-of-way engineering, or the right-of-way manager or survey manager, you should have a monumentation estimate prepared and ready for the bid let team that says, hey, when this project gets done, we've got X amount of dollars we need to have in the project for us to monument it. So we want to earmark our money so that if we can, we need it there, because this needs to happen. And so they put that in. So once all the acquisitions are done and it's closed and recorded, then the right-of-way surveyor needs to deed record the map per the manual, and like we showed. And hopefully I've heard that maybe this isn't happening lately, someone said, but it was the regions need to get with their construction offices and others though. And typically when second note is issued, and what second note is, all on-site bid items are complete. And usually the construction office will notify the right-of-way surveyor or the manager that, hey, second note has been sent on this project. So that's basically saying it's almost done. You know, just got to do the final cleanup, get ready for third note. But monumentation is part of that final closing of the EA. So now is a good time when they let you know that, saying, hey, the project's done. Okay, go get all your deeds, deed record the right-of-way map, and start preparing for monumentation. And so make sure and do the revision history, change the status stamp, that sort of thing on maps. And then once the project is complete, you do the monumentation, you file it with the county surveyor per the statute, take the reference when it's recorded, put that on the right-of-way again, see it's still living, and now you plot off a new one. So, and that's it.